Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fright Club. I am your master of ceremonies, your hostess with the mostest ghostess, Colin. So here at the Fright Club, we talk, review, and rate anything horror. Remember the 3 rules of Fright Club. Submit your idea of movies we should review and rate and talk about. Subscribe and share. And the 3rd rule, talk about the Fright Club. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Fright Club's I Want to Play a Game. Me and my little saw voice. So, when I was a kid, one of the biggest games that I really remember is a little something called the Ouija board. Yes, this is an original Ouija board patented from 1919. Thank you, eBay. So, when I was a kid, I remember there was this really cool commercial about the Ouija board, which we're actually going to play for you right now.
Ouija, it's just a game, isn't it? Isn't it?
Isn't it?
Parker Brothers kind of fun.
So kids, always remember that you have to be 18 years or older to buy cigarettes, 21 years or older to buy alcohol, and only 6 and up to conjure a demon. So, Ouija boards in circa 1891 or so, Ouija, the wonderful talking board, was actually advertised in newspapers. Now, talks were heard that it was coming from Ohio about 1886, but it was actually patented by Bond, Elijah Bond, in 1890 in Baltimore, Maryland, which, by the way, this is actually from. So, no one is really sure why the Ouija board is connected to spiritualism, but a lot of rumors suspect it's because the average lifespan back in the late 1890s or so was about 50 years old. People were obsessed with contacting loved ones who've passed away too soon. Plus, you had all kinds of things like famine and drought and disease and all these other things killing off people. But one thing that I found absolutely fascinating was the naming of the board. So Elijah Bond and his sister and the other 4 pateners held a seance. Now, they claim that they asked what its name was, and it spelled out Ouija. Now, the rumor is that Bond's sister actually had a pendant with famed civil rights activist Ouida in it. So a lot of people think that maybe she was just kind of spelling the name with the planchette in her hand. Or maybe it was kind of a thing where people were seeing the civil rights activists and moving it subconsciously. Now, reports of the board telling people to do awful things actually began in 1921, but no one paid attention until 1973 when a little girl named Reagan got possessed. Can you name it? From the movie The Exorcist. That movie drove people insane when it came to Ouija boards, thinking that Ouija boards were now contacting demons and spirits and they were going to possess everyone and you're going to spit pea soup from your bed and do things with crucifixes that you really shouldn't do. Also, famous people who actually use the Ouija board, there's 2 of them that you guys might actually know about. One, Mary Todd Lincoln, who was actually, of course, the wife of our president, Abe Lincoln. Now, what she was trying to do was contact her 11-year-old son who died of pneumonia. And what a lot of people say that Mary Todd Lincoln went a little insane with the Ouija board, and she actually foresaw Abe Lincoln's death while using it. And also, the other famous person, Mary Winchester. A lot of people know Mary Winchester from the Winchester Mystery House, which she married into, I believe it was her husband who was the creator of the Winchester rifle that killed so many people used in all of the wars. So Mary Winchester built this house after her husband died and held a seance in one of these rooms. And the board told her to keep building the house with hundreds of different rooms, that stairs that lead to nowhere, doors that open into nothing, so that way the spirits won't find her. Also, they made a movie called Winchester. It's coming out soon. I'll make sure to review it. Oh, is it out?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
I just
Well,
watched it last night.
oh, did you? Was it good?
I liked it.
Really? Because I got horrible reviews. So I will review that I will review that movie, and then sometime soon, I'm sure. But yeah, Ouija boards. Alright folks, it is on to movie time. So the first movie that I highly recommend is a movie called Witch Hunt, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. So Witch Hunt is about 5 women who gather for a friend's birthday party, and the friend really wants to play an old card game from when she was a kid called Witch Hunt. Now, the game itself is a card game kind of like Old Maid. There are 5 characters in the card game, and each one has something special that it does. So the dealer deals out a 1 card per player, and also while a tape is playing, explaining the rules of the game, this old scary witch voice. And each little card has something special. Also, while this is happening, everyone has to close their eyes. Now, they are allowed to look at their card 1 time. And as the voice on the tape calls out the character, that character's special ability comes into play while everyone's eyes are closed. The whole point of the game is to guess who's the witch. Now, you also have like a Puritan, other people who can lie or switch cards. So you're never really sure who the witch is. Like I said, it's kind of like Old Maid. But throughout the game itself, things get a little creepy. So you realize that 4 of these girls all went to school together. They're best friends. But something happened when they were kids. They accused a teacher of doing something. The other girl, the friend, the 5th member of this game, is actually a reporter. She writes books, and she's trying to get the inside details on what happened when these girls were kids. The cool thing about this movie is that it only has 4 locations. There's the living room, a small scene in the kitchen, the office, and then the bathroom. For a movie that only took place in 4 locations, I was riveted. I could not take my eyes off of this movie because so many different eerie things were happening. Also, it's the classic idea of the Salem witch trials. Everyone is pointing at each other as a witch. You're a witch. You're a witch. But no one really knows if a witch was actually there in the room with them. And if there was it one of them? Also, the movie is creepy. It's funny, it's bizarre, and it's absolutely amazing. One of my top films as of right now that I highly recommend. I give it 5 film reels. Alright, so the next movie on my list of games is a movie entitled Stay Alive, which I'm actually sure everyone is very familiar with. You can rent this movie via Netflix, or you can probably get it on your cable serving service provider, whatever that may be. So the movie Stay Alive is actually about these kids who get a market to play a video game about Elizabeth Bathory. Those of you who do not know who Elizabeth Bathory is, Elizabeth Bathory was a countess back, I believe, in the 1800s, maybe even 1700s, who ran a girls' boarding school, so to speak. And a lot of these girls would kind of disappear. And no one really knew why. And a lot of people suspected that Elizabeth Bathory, in order to stay young, would bathe in the blood of these virgin girls. And that's kind of what the video game these characters play, and they have to solve the mystery. But as the movie progresses, you begin to realize that what's happening in the game is happening in real life. If you die in the game, you die in real life. This movie, you had to solve the mystery of Elizabeth Bathory to survive. And to me, it was fascinating. I was scared, actually, during this movie in particular, because I play video games constantly, and I don't think I'd want any of them to come to life, in a sense, that I have to survive in order to play. But this movie had so many different elements and different ideas that were really scary, because it was, how do you escape from a game? And what do you do to survive? I'm not going to tell you. You need to go out there and watch it. So the next movie in our game night series is a movie called Would You Rather. Now, we've all played this game, right? Would you rather do this or would you rather do that? It's a fun little game, kind of get to know people. You play it in college, that type of thing. But this movie is actually about a woman who's played by Brittany Snow. A lot of people know her. And she gets invited to play this game of Would You Rather at this rich man's house. But there's a prize, a cash value, that if she wins the game. Now, she's going to use this for a very particular reason, which, I have to say, what I loved about this movie, it hits home. The reason why she chooses to explore this game option is to save lives, in a sense. Hers, her brothers. Unfortunately, her parents have passed away. So she's left with this burden of growing up so fast and having to be the adult for her brother. So she has to participate in this game. But this game is so effed up. There are horrible things that these people need to do in order to surpass to the next level. And, for example, they do this thing of would you rather stab the person in the leg next to you or electrocute yourself for 30 seconds? What kind of options are these? Of course characters try to escape and they can't do it, but then again you're wondering, how can someone actually do this? Well, there's also money involved. Cops don't really seem to care. So the greatest thing about this movie is that age-old question, what would you do for a loved one? Really, I think a lot of people would do anything, which is why this movie hits home so well. Go out there, see this movie. Once again, and this is the first time ever for this series, we're giving this another 5 film reels. 5! So if you're watching this video, I'm sure you're probably wondering, do you want to play a game? I wonder if he's going to talk about the Saw franchise. Well, of course I'm going to talk about the Saw franchise. Now, granted, I'm not going to talk about every single one. I'm going to give you guys a little brief moment of things. So the first movie, Saw 1, loved it. Who didn't love this movie? It had everything you needed. It was 2 guys in a room with a body in the center, and they had to figure out how to get out. And then you had that twist at the ending that Jigsaw himself was there the whole time as the body in the room. Amazing. This movie floored me when I first saw it. And then you had the second movie come out. Whole bunch of people having to survive a whole bunch of traps in one giant building. It was pretty good. I liked it. And then you had the third one, which I hated. I hated the third one. It was so much background that they were just kind of throwing at you that it got really convoluted and kind of confusing. And then we had the fourth one, which was kind of the third one only before it. And it was also very confusing, which, frankly, I hated. But then you had the fifth one, which I thought was pretty good because we're actually going in a timeline. We're going in order of things. I wasn't as confused. And then we had the sixth one. Frankly, I loved the sixth one. And then we had the seventh one, which was another one that I loved. And the reason why I loved these two itself was because we had the survivors do the group circle and talk about how they've survived. And a lot of these background characters were so convinced that what Saw put them through made them a better person. And then you also had the people who were like, no, F that. I lost my arm for this. This is ridiculous. That is what I loved about the last two movies in the franchise. But now we get into Jigsaw, the current release of the newest Saw franchise. So I have to say, this movie took 7 years in the making. They've been planning this film for Lord knows how long, just based off the first 7 movies. I'll tell you guys right now, I loved it. I thought it was extremely fascinating. It wasn't convoluted. It wasn't confusing. It was all put together really, really well. But the best part about this movie, and you have to go out and see it, is they bring the surprise back. That moment in the first movie that you realize that Jigsaw is actually in the room and your jaw kind of hits the floor, they bring it back in this movie. Something they haven't had in the past 6 movies. They bring it back to you. They slap you on the face with it. And I loved it. So, I'm giving Jigsaw a big 5 film reel rating. Alright, so the moment has arrived. The whole point of this episode is for the release of the movie Truth or Dare that is currently in theaters. Now, I'm going to start off by saying this movie is eerily similar to the sci-fi movie that came out last year around October called, coincidentally, Truth or Dare. That particular movie is about a whole bunch of kids who were told not to go into a house because, well, there's a ghost there that likes to play games and will haunt them. Well, of course, they go into the house. Now, this movie got some recognition because it starred Heather Langenkamp, who, as we all know, was Nancy in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. First one, third one, and then also Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. Now, She plays a girl who played the game with her friends in the 80s, and there was a scene that was eerily similar to the one that's now in theaters about a guy who was on the roof, and it was his dare to walk the roof line. Will he survive? You never know. So the thing about the sci-fi movie was that there wasn't a lot of background, just a ghost haunting people, truth or dare, do it or die, whatever it is. But the movie made me grimace because of some of the dare, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. So when this movie, Truth or Dare, came out in theaters, I had to go and see it. Now, there are pros to this movie itself. The current one in theaters, Truth or Dare, it's a great movie for younger audiences today. Everyone's on Snapchat, everyone's on their Instagram, everyone is recording everything around them. So, for the new millennials of today, I think this is a really great movie to get you into horror movies if you're not currently into it. Also, the one thing that I loved about this movie that this sci-fi one did not have was amazing background. You got to know, why was a game of Truth or Dare? That's a child's game. So, there's a lot of background as to why this game was in particular chosen. And plus you got a lot of really cool background on some history and some cult and the Mexico feel itself. So overall, this movie was a lot of fun. But I do have some cons about this movie. Personally, this is just a personal thing, I wasn't a big fan of the ending. Now, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but morally, it did not really hit home for me. I was very left just disinterested once the ending was actually put forth. Now, another thing that I didn't like about this movie in particular was that this entity used the same things to get to the players, which was, frankly, boring. When they first start to play the game, they're college students. They pick at each other. Oh, you write prescriptions for freshmen, or you have a crush on your best friend's boyfriend. All this kind of, you cheat on your boyfriend. All these kinds of things to pick at your friends. But the entity uses the exact same notions to get into the heads of the players. And it was boring in that sense. Honestly, it made the characters really two-dimensional, and frankly, I didn't really care that much about the characters if they lived or died, because whoever wrote this movie didn't give me enough background on those characters. It didn't make me love them. I mean, there were a couple, Tyler Posey, how could you not? But still, I wanted more background on the characters, not just the game of Truth or Dare, or what was physically happening. So, because of all that, I have to say, go out in theaters, go see this movie. I do highly recommend it, especially if you're a young millennial watching this and you love horror movies. But I have to say, I'm only going to give this movie 4 film reels. Oakley dokley, folks. So, that is the end of the show. I do hope you thoroughly enjoyed it. And if you guys really, 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 really liked it, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and that you like it, and that you post it, and you get everyone else to watch it. But also, make sure you stay tuned for my next episode, all about creepy children.